Welcome to what will probably be the weirdest and most unique romance film ranking list you've probably ever seen. I'm not much of a romance film guy, but there are several films that I really enjoy that are romantic films, whether it is a romantic drama, a rom-com, period piece kind of thing. I do have my fair share of enjoyment out of some of those, but this one is going to be a ranking of my top 10 favorites of films that I consider to be romance films. So coming from a guy who's mostly an action, sci-fi kind of guy, this should be interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's get ready. Let's jump in. Kicking things off with the one that actually kind of inspired me to want to do this list is a recent film that I just watched on Hulu called The Greatest Hits. This is one that is probably one of the most traditional romance films that you'll probably see on this list. This is a movie that stars Lucy Boynton as well as a number of others that I wanted to check, mostly because Lucy Boynton in it, and she's one of my celeb crushes. I love her, and several other films, but she was really good in this one. She plays the lead in this one. It kind of tells the story of this girl whose boyfriend dies tragically in a car accident, and since that accident, whenever she hears a song, it time travels her back to that moment in time when she first heard that song. And so she tries to use it in a way to stop the events that tragically killed her boyfriend. And so it's a really interesting kind of spin on the type of story that it is. The romance is definitely there, but it has a cool sci-fi kind of angle as well. I was a little mixed on where it lands in the end. I won't spoil it here for if you have not checked it out, but it was a pretty cool movie, one that I really enjoyed, and probably one that I would say, as far as romance films go, probably one of my favorites. Next, we have the anime film Your Name. This is one by the famous director Makoto Shinkai, I believe is his name. Yeah, Makoto Shinkai. And these movies that he makes are fantastic. This is probably one of my favorites of his films. It got a cool sci-fi angle to the romance film that's being told. It's kind of like a body swap movie, and it tells the story of this adolescent teenage boy and girl, and they start swapping bodies every so many intervals of time, and they get to know each other through this body swap process as they exchange like notes and things like that and do things with each other's friends, that they kind of get to know each other and almost start to fall for each other in a certain kind of way. It's weird a bit, it's an anime film, it's something different, something unique, but it's a incredibly powerful story, insane twists and reveals along the way. It's a fantastically told story, absolutely beautiful animation. Just look at the cover on the front there and the artwork on the back. Like it's beautifully animated, really great story, one that really had me on the edge of my seat all throughout, and especially when those twists and turns come in the final act, I couldn't believe it. It's a fantastic movie, definitely one of my favorite romance films. Next, we have an absolute classic of romance films, When Harry Met Sally. I watched this movie for the first time last year and absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastically told, incredible performances, really great just overall filmmaking. The vibes and the tone of this movie is really great. Just the amount of time that it encompasses in the journey of this couple as they kind of begin to fall for each other eventually. I think it's fantastic. This is probably arguably my favorite romance film of all time, and like I said, it's a classic. Everyone loves this movie that's seen it. I think Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal give fantastic performances. It's an incredible movie. I can't wait to watch it again soon. I know it's a movie that takes place over multiple years, but I guess it's tend to be, like kind of a fall type movie. So I'm looking forward to giving another watch again this fall. I do want to show it to my wife because I don't think she's seen this one, and she tends to like romantic films as well. So definitely another one off my list. Next, one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, even outside of just being a favorite romance film, we have Sing Street. I consider this to be like a romantic drama. I mean, it's about a boy who meets a girl and in order to impress her, starts a band. And the romance isn't at the absolute center of the movie. It's more about him and his journey and his friends that he makes along the way. But the romance is absolutely there. It's a subplot, but it's a pretty strong subplot. The performances are great. The music is incredible. It's fantastically made. I absolutely love the filmmaking that goes into this one. I listen to this soundtrack all the time still. Like I said, this is one of my 10 favorite movies of all time, and this is easily one of my favorite romance films as well. If somehow you have not seen Sing Street, it's always my go-to recommendation for people. I think it is currently streaming on Netflix, so give it a watch, grab that Blu-ray. It's definitely worth having in your collection. Next, one of my childhood favorites in a movie that at first glance you might not think is a romance movie, but for me, it's definitely a romance film because it's there. We have Shrek, the first Shrek movie, absolute classic of my childhood and my generation for sure. These movies are great, and especially this first one is just, you know, a lightning in a bottle situation. They did recapture it again for Shrek 2. I love Shrek 2 as well. But this one being the one of Shrek and Fiona coming together, forming that friendship that turns into a relationship, an eventual marriage. It's a fantastic movie. I love it. There's great humor along the way with Shrek and Donkey's characters. Fiona's in there. She's really great. She kind of, you know, is presented as this stereotypical damsel in distress, but she's not. Very capable, very powerful woman. I just love everything about this one. It kind of subverted many expectations of the time with something different and unique for the time period as well, and it's really stood the test of time. So this is a really great, really enjoyable, fun movie. If you have somehow never seen Shrek before, you're doing yourself a disservice. Give it a watch. It's a great time and one of my favorite romances. I told you I'd have some weird picks on this one. It's going to be the most unique romance film list you've seen. Another more traditional one, Past Lives, from just over the past year or so. Past Lives was one of my favorite movies of last year. I absolutely love it. I've seen this movie like 3 times now. Every time it gets me. That ending is perfection. I love the way that they wrap everything up. It's a great story all along the way, getting to see the journey of these two characters over multiple decades as they come in and out of each other's lives and just figure out what they want to do. It's a beautiful story, actually partially true from the director's life, and she just crafted it beautifully. It's incredibly well made. The cinematography is beautiful. The writing is fantastic, and the performances from Greta Lee, Teo Yu, and John Magaru are fantastic as well. This is one of my go-to recommendations along with Sing Street as probably one of my favorite, you know, films and romance movies. Next, a movie I had no expectation I would enjoy as much as I did, but coming from director Greta Gerwig before she had her huge Barbie success, we also have Little Women. This is a movie that you would not expect a guy like me to enjoy, but I do thoroughly enjoy this movie. I think the performances are really great. The direction's really good. You got a stellar cast of a lot of great performers and actors in here, and it's just a beautiful story. It's a really cool kind of new interpretation of a familiar story for anyone who watched Little Women. I've seen bits and pieces of the old ones growing up with my sisters and my mom, but this one I think is the quintessential way to tell that story. I thought the non-linear aspect of it's really cool, and just the new kind of modern twists and differences they put in, even being a period piece still. So I always thoroughly enjoy and really appreciate this movie. I've seen it several times over, and I enjoy it every single time. Next, we have what's probably also one of my favorite musicals of all time with In the Heights. This is a cool one because it's a fantastic musical. I think it's really great. Lin-Manuel Miranda does great work, as he always does. But besides that, we have kind of multiple stories being told throughout this one, and it juggles each of them really well. Some of them are friendships, others are parental relationships, and then there's a couple of romance relationships in here as well. So I still consider this one to be overall a romance movie, but a great musical at the same time. If you've not checked this one out, it's a perfect summertime movie. I'm hoping to sneak it in there before we get into the next season with fall. So In the Heights, another one of my favorite musicals and romance films. Next, one of my other favorite movies from last year, we have Elemental. This one I did not expect to love as much as I did. I knew I would like it just based off the trailers and, you know, the posters and stuff that I'd seen of it. Then watched it and just immediately fell in love with it. I think it's one of the best Pixar movies in years, maybe even one of their best movies, which is saying a lot. And what I love about it, it is a Pixar movie, but it's another one kind of like Soul, where it's like, yeah, this one's a little bit more like you can take your kids to it and they'll enjoy it. But Elemental and Soul, I feel like, are very much for adults, I think, especially Soul, but definitely this one too. It is very much a romantic story told through the lens of a Pixar animated film. I think it does a really good job of just carrying you through that romance. You know, it hits the normal beats and stuff like that. It's nothing too complicated, but it goes through a lot of really interesting themes and character development throughout that I just think just leaves a lot for the viewer to think about and ponder and consider. I absolutely love the music throughout this one. The animation is incredible. It's beautiful. The world design, the world building is really cool, fun, and interesting as well. So Elemental, one of my favorite movies from last year, and probably one of my favorite romance films as well. And then lastly, we have the least romantic movie on here, but one that I would still say is a bit of a romance film. We have Baby Driver. I mean, at the very core, what disrupts the day-to-day life and story of this guy is when Baby meets the girl of his dreams in this movie. So, I mean, you can't not say it's not a romantic movie. So this one, thoroughly enjoyable. One of the best action movies of the past several years as well. Filmmaking for this one, of how they timed all of like the action beats to music and stuff like that's incredible. And then it's just got a really good story, fun, interesting, exciting characters all along the way with all different quirks and unique personality traits and stuff like that. But at its core, Ansel Elgort and Lily James give really good performances throughout this one. I mean, it's not, you know, front and foremost of it being a romance movie, but the elements are still there, and one that I would definitely throw on my list if I was to recommend some favorite romance films. So that wraps up my list with all of these, as well as the greatest hits streaming on Hulu for my favorite romance films. It's an interesting list, I think, because there's a lot of non-traditional and classic movies on there, but we still got some of the best ones in there, I think. So I would love to hear from you down in the comments. What are some of your favorite romance films, whether they are in the traditional sense or some of the more unique ones, like for me, Shrek? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to have you join me there. Thank you for sticking around to the end. I will see you in the next one.